passengers that he recalled one lady walked past him and said, "So, did we land or were we shot down?"
Wow. It's true. I've had some landings that smooth as butter. And then I have had some landings where about halfway through the landing, you think, well, I think I've gone to confession recently. So I think I should be okay.
Be true. Again, as a passenger, I've had landings so smooth. I was actually surprised that, oh, the flight is over.
Right. Oh, we're on the ground.
On the ground.
Yeah.
I've had that. And yes, there has been the other kind.
Right. Yeah. We're still in the air. Yeah. Surely the plane shaking this much clearly indicates an impact with terra firma.
One
Yeah.
would think.
Yeah. One would think. Well, my pilot buddy Joey scared me one day. I said, man, I just don't like turbulence. I just don't like it. I mean, it's one thing to kind of go bump up and down. But then when you just feel the back of the plane start fishing behind you back and forth, yawing back and forth. Oh, I don't like that at all. So I said, but probably not a big deal, right? And Joey, who's a pilot and flies every week, said, oh, no. Turbulence could rip a wing off. He's like, so we try.
Matter of fact.
Right. Very matter. Oh, yeah. Turbulence can rip a wing off if you're caught in a thunderstorm, especially. So we have radar. We try to avoid the thunderstorms. But radar's not perfect. Jeez. Well,
I thought turbulence is never brought down a plane.
well, maybe the planes that have gone down haven't been around to report that it was from turbulence. Right. Yeah. The FAA had to say, no, it was it was mechanical failure of some description. They can't let the flying public know that a little gap in the air bubble might send you to kingdom come. Yeah.
There's a certain element of danger inherent in the enterprise. Sufficiently modest.
Yes. Sufficiently modest. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They call those occupational hazards.
Occupational hazards.
Right.
Secret. I should ask,
are we live?
I did turn us on.
We did turn us on. Padre, if you just put that mic a little closer. Yeah.
Okay.
If you take the base to the edge of the table. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Good. Well, welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
Yeah. A lot happened in the last couple of months.
Yeah, very busy couple months.
Yeah.
In many respects.
Are we at war?
That's an interesting question. It becomes a matter of definition, doesn't it?
It must.
It's become a matter of definition. Yeah, it's kind of, I suppose you might call it an undeclared war, like the undeclared war that President John Adams, waged with Republican France.
Mm-hmm.
It's undeclared and limited.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, war.
But war. Yeah. What do you don't think there's a fundamental difference in airstrikes and Air Force operations and boots on the ground, as we say? You don't think there's a fundamental difference? Like, once you have boots on the ground in an enemy territory, that changes the enterprise that you're involved in.
Enterprise, right?
But it doesn't change the definition. Sorry, it doesn't shift the definition, perhaps.
It may shift the definition. At what point does a declaration of war become mandatory? That's an interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a difficult question. It's never been resolved in all of American history.
Okay.
It was very clear to John Adams that he did not need a declaration of war to authorize naval action against semi-official and official naval forces of the French Republic.
Mm-hmm.
It was clear to him that he didn't need a declaration of war to authorize that. But
this is in 1798?
1798.
Okay.
But he was very clear with Alexander Hamilton, who had military ambitions, all sorts of ambitions. He just had ambitions. Very clear that John Adams made it clear to Alexander Hamilton that it was only going to be a naval war in the Caribbean. that there was not going to be an American offensive on New Orleans.
Uh-huh.
Which the French
Because,
had coerced from Spain.
oh. And that decision came from a desire not to escalate
Not
anything?
to escalate the war, and I think some constitutional sensitivity.
Uh-huh.
That certainly a major land offensive required declaration of war.
Uh-huh.
It's an unresolved issue in the long history of the American Republic. At some point, a declaration of war is required. At what point is it required? I'm inclined to argue that large-scale land operations require it, although Harry Truman never got one for Korea. He never even got a congressional resolution. He operated the legal theory behind the Korean intervention was the United Nations resolution, Security Council resolution. That's pretty shaky. Large-scale ground combat in Vietnam, there was never a declaration of war. The only authorization was the very vague Gulf of Tonkin resolution. So that's of course what inspired after the Vietnam War, the Congressional War Powers Act. The executive branch, no matter what party currently has the president, the executive branch has never been content with the War Powers Act, and it's still pretty shaky. It's not a well-written law. Of course, it's from the 1970s. It's not a well-written law. But they were trying to do something important. At some point, the level of American military activity is such that a formal declaration of war by Congress should be required. But at what level?
And that's an unresolved question.
Unresolved. We had John J. Pershing chasing Pancho Villa across a major portion of northern Mexico. Merely an executive action. Before that, the occupation of Veracruz, this is Wilson's time. Several interventions in Latin America in the course of the 20s. At what point is a declaration of war required? Generally, the executive has operated on the assumption that swift military action doesn't require a declaration of war. And generally, the executive has acted on the assumption that relatively small scale military action does not require a declaration of war.
So it's true to say we can hang our hat on a declaration of war must come from Congress,
That's clear.
but
When is it required?
when is such a declaration required?
Yes.
Does it require a national enemy, right? You couldn't declare war on the Sinaloa cartel, could you? Or could you?
No, that's interesting. It's a little like President George W. Bush's rhetorical excrescence when he declared, "We are at war against terror." That's like saying we're at war against fright. We're at war against anxiety. You wage war against particular people.
Okay.
He got a congressional resolution, but not a declaration of war. The executive branch has been leery of that. But our activity in Iraq certainly became large scale enough. We tended to predict it wasn't so large scale. Not too long ago, someone who had a certain position in the military during the Obama presidency told me, right? I wouldn't know myself, right? But he told me that because of his position, he knew for a fact that Americans were engaged in large-scale combat activity in Iraq on the very day when President Obama went on national television to inform the public that there are no major, and the executive, how shall I put this? Small-scale military actions are almost routine without any kind of congressional approval. The American presidency was designed to be powerful. The question is how powerful? It's designed to be powerful. John Adams famously said, I think it should be famous, he said that this is 1780s, said an American president must be more powerful than a Spartan king, than an ancient Spartan king or a modern Polish king. It was definitely understood the president is not to be a figurehead. He is to be powerful. And he is to be commander-in-chief with wide discretion, but not unlimited discretion. So that becomes the question. You say not unlimited, what exactly are the limits? And we've never satisfactorily answered that. I myself am inclined to say large-scale ground combat, particularly if you are A, drafting people, as in Korea and Vietnam, or B, deploying National Guard units in combat overseas. My own opinion is that that should require a declaration of war. But clearly, that hasn't been done. Again, no declaration of war in Korea or Vietnam. Resolution in the Gulf War I, resolution in Gulf War II, but no formal declaration of war, which I think would have been appropriate.
Interesting. Your theory is that if something is requiring the drafting of citizens to become soldiers or the deployment
For combat.
for combat,
Or the deployment of the National Guard, which in principle is the successor to the old militia. So in my view, deploying the National Guard for combat overseas should require a declaration of war. But clearly, that's not what's done. But I think that while the American presidency is designed to be powerful, American president has wide discretion, but not unlimited discretion. Where are the limits? In my opinion, that would be a good limit. In my opinion, a good limit would be sending draftees to combat, sending the National Guard into combat overseas. In my opinion, that signifies a national effort, and national effort to me means declaration of war
by the elected
by the Congress of the United States.
The current administration's at least current decision not to put troops in Iran
Sensible decision.
on the ground, is that more of a political measure or a strategic and tactical measure?
Of course, both.
Both.
There's no way the American people would put up with that after our unpleasant adventure in Iraq. But also
Iraq specifically, not Afghanistan and Iraq sort of taken together.
Taken together, but in terms of numbers of troops, numbers of casualties, Iraq was the bigger affair. Also, in terms of it being very much our option.
Afghanistan kind of had to go do something.
Basically, he had to do something after 9/11, absolutely.
Iran, you didn't have. Sorry, Iraq, you didn't.
Didn't have to. Didn't have to.
No. I remember even as a 15-year-old wondering if Bush had this sort of ambition to finish what his dad started.
I wondered about that. I remember having a fierce debate with one of my brothers after the Gulf War, 91 Gulf War. And he was of the opinion we should have, quote, finished the job, close quote. Moved on to Baghdad, which would have been relatively simple in purely military terms after the cataclysm inflicted on Iraqi forces. But my argument at the time was, yeah, but we could do that, but then what? Somebody has to run the blasted place. So we better not do that unless we're willing to put some Iraqis in control. And that means we need to have an idea in advance of what Iraqis are going to put in control and not try to run it ourselves. So,
because whatever Iraqis we do put in charge aren't going to be American, so they're going to do some very un-American things.
And they'll have to.
And they'll have to.
Yes, I don't have my collar. But in a regime change Iraq, how shall I put this? Democratic propriety was not going to be an option. There's going to be violent resistance, no matter what the new regime was. There's going to be violent resistance. And that violent resistance needed to be dealt with by natives in a native way. That is to say,
Heads are gonna roll.
that's going to roll. But we can't be the ones doing the lopping.
Uh-huh.
So we needed to have an idea of what Iraqis were going to put in control. And you can come up with a title for you. Congratulations. It couldn't be people at the top level because they'd been too close to the previous regime, but colonels, mainly colonels and civilian equivalents, said, congratulations, you are now a member of the Provisional Government of National Reconciliation and Reconstruction. And as the Provisional National Government of Reconciliation and Reconstruction, we will give you goodies. We'll give you goodies, and you'll basically align yourselves with us in terms of foreign policy, basically. We're not going to try to run the country. You run it your way. We're not going to look too closely. Don't do anything too awfully ghastly.
Especially in front of cameras.
Especially in front of cameras. Be careful where the cameras are. But you run it your way. You take care of things. Congratulations, oh Government of National Reconciliation, Provisional Government of National Reconciliation and Reconstruction. And I think I supported, interesting that I had this argument with my brother in 91, but perhaps because I was affected by 9/11, I supported what we did in 2003. I didn't have any big doubts until President Bush said we were going to run the place for a while, and that we were going to supervise this absurd process of, just trying to channel Harry Truman post-World War II, this absurd process of de-Baathification. As Patton got in trouble for saying when, people attacked Patton presiding over part of occupied Germany, they attacked him for using so many ex-Nazis. And he said, well, of course. I mean, we have to run the sewers, we have to run the electrical system, we have to run the railroads, we have to have people who know how to do that. The people who know how to do that, they mostly joined the Nazi Party because that's what you did to get ahead. And famously, he added, and this is what got him fired, it's the same reason that people in America will join the Republican or Democratic Party if that's the party in charge of the city. It's true. For a lot of people in that situation, that's how you get ahead. Post-communist Europe, it would have been stupid to say, well, if you were at all a member of the Communist Party, you are now permanently banned from government employment. Who's going to run things? They were the people who were running things. So the moment that we came up with de-Baathification, and
So it was ideological,
sloppy
thinking, ideological environment.
And high naivete.
Cooked up by people who had never spent time with their own boots.
And he didn't study history. He didn't study history. What history shows is what I called the armed foreign bastard syndrome. In other words, no matter what the situation is, an armed foreigner in your country is always a bastard.
Yeah, AFBs, we got to get this.
It's always going to be the case. It will generate resistance. So marvelous history of the Vietnam War, recent history. And one Vietnamese man is quoted. He wasn't a devout communist. He wasn't a communist at all, but he resented the Americans. What did we ever do to him? And he said, you didn't do anything to me. Just I'd go down to a beach in my country and there'd be these huge, muscular Americans just not doing anything awful, just running around on the beach, playing on the beach like it was their country. It generates resentment. Avoid occupation if you can. Sometimes you can't. But avoid it if you can, like the plague, like a vampire.
Right.
So if you can find a group of people willing to cooperate with you, say colonels or the civilian equivalent, who are willing to be the provisional government of national reconciliation and reconstruction, entrust things to them and let them go at it. Give them some goodies, give them some support.
And know that the press is going to crucify you for some political enemies that were shot
Yes. But the
by
press,
people in American civilian uniforms.
yes. But they're not going to be as, the press won't be as, talked to a veteran of the Afghan war once, and he was a nice guy. And he said, I never felt any real hatred for the Taliban. So the only person I hated in all my time in Afghanistan, the only person I hated was one British journalist. He said, I'd like to turn you over to them.
Right.
You can discover how nice they really are. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I'm a little like General Sherman. He once heard that a boatload of journalists struck a Confederate mine in the Mississippi River, and he celebrated. He's terribly disappointed when he discovered that the ship sank in shallow water and they were all saved. It was one of the disappointments of his military career. The press, they're going to do what they do, but they're going to be more upset if Americans do it. But you're not going to run a place like Iraq or Afghanistan in an American way. So you pick your group of natives, you provide them support. Either they handle it or they can't. But we don't nail our flag to the mast. We don't commit ourselves to making Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan work. You're going to have natives do it or not do it. I think the current administration has a sense of that. There was the vague hope, and I think it was understandable. There was the vague hope that one strike and there'd be some sort of upheaval in Iran, but certainly
not materialized.
No, and certainly we're not going to be involved in regime change and trying to run the country. That's a political decision. It's also a strategic decision. Mm-hmm. That our interest is to show that we will not tolerate efforts to acquire a nuclear weapon, and we will not tolerate efforts to interfere with shipping in the Gulf, which you might as well call the Arabian Gulf instead of the Persian Gulf, just to annoy them.
Also, saving all those civilians that were being murdered in Iran.
It was pretty bad. Pretty bad.
200,000 civilians were killed, and they were begging Trump for help.
Yes. There was moral pressure. Well, and the Iranian government showed its contempt. I hate that government. Ugh. It's a loathsome government.
Oh, yeah.
It's a loathsome government. And it was the Vatican, in its frequently ineffectual way, decided that it would give the Iranian ambassador the Grand Cross of the Order of St. Gregory or some such thing. You give a Grand Cross to a representative of the Islamic Republic. But anyway, then the Vatican tries to explain, well, this is a routine thing to do for someone who's been there so long that cobwebs have grown on him. But still, it's a loathsome regime. And it was not one of the Vatican's better moments. It's a loathsome regime. And I'll tell you how it showed its contempt for the Iranian people. The national sport in Iran is wrestling. They're very serious about it. Very good at it. Very serious about it. The Iranian government hanged a young national wrestling champion in the course of its crackdown political opposition. And when they did that, that's a big thing in Iran, being a national wrestling championship. That was that loathsome little collection of whiskered fanatics way of giving the middle finger to the Iranian people. They have contempt for their people. They are so dedicated to one particular version of Shia Islam that they cannot be trusted to behave rationally, which is why they can't be allowed a nuclear weapon. Some people will say, we dealt with the Soviet Union. They had lots of nuclear weapons. but we always were fairly confident that we were dealing with rational actors.
Opposed.
Opposed, but rational.
Hmm.
Operating in this world and not having dreams about the hidden imam emerging at the end times. All part of, many versions of Shia Islam. That's a complicated story. Many versions of it. But if you're Scottish, you might remember the romanticism of Bonnie Prince Charlie. If you're Southern, you might remember the romanticism of the Lost Cause. So you take Bonnie Prince Charlie, the Lost Cause, and add a dose of end times.
Put it all on steroids.
Put it all on steroids, and you get the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's not a rational actor.
Well, people seem to forget that the Muslims tried to conquer all of Europe for about 1,000 years.
Yeah. Well, I make Muslims that covers a lot of territory. Just as Christians covers a lot of territory. The divisions in Islam are fascinating. You know how bad they are. In the course of one of my favorite board games is Here I Stand. And one of the players in Here I Stand is, I've got to get you playing that someday.
You have to get me playing.
Yeah, next time you're up in Pell. One of the players is the Ottoman player who engages in piracy. That's how he gets his points, engages in piracy. He can also try to attack Vienna, but unless the Habsburg player is totally stupid, it's not going to work. But anyway, at that very time, is the Padishah Sultan was the self-appointed, he ruled Mecca, big empire, self-appointed guardian, spokesman, defender of Sunni Islam. Next door, there was Shia Persia. And at one point, they were always at war. Mainly they were at war over who gets to control Iraq. Who wants to control Iraq? But anyway, they're mainly at war over who gets to control.
In a pre-oil world, they want to control Iraq.
Now the prestige of Baghdad. At one point, one of the Padishah Sultan's muftis informed him that God is more pleased by the death of one Shiite than he is by the death of 100 Christians. That got to be a very bitter division. Still is pretty bitter. I remember talking to someone who grew up Shiite in Saudi Arabia. Ooh, Saudi Arabia is very Sunni.
Very Sunni controlled.
Very Sunni controlled.
But even the population of Saudi Arabia, is it majority Sunni?
That's the only thing that's really allowed.
Oh.
He said going up Shiite in Saudi Arabia, people knew he was Shiite.
Mm-hmm.
And he said at one point, he said, first of all, he said, no non-Muslim would be able to recognize the difference. But apparently, I have to go with him, right? It's with what he said. Apparently, they do their daily prayer thing a little bit differently. That the imam makes his call to prayer. It's so much nicer to have a bell. But the imam makes his call to. That's why they went with the imam. They went with not the imam, but anyway, the call to prayer is issued. They went with the call to prayer instead of the bell, quite deliberately to distinguish themselves from the Christians. The Christians ring the bell instead. But we ourselves, we do this, whatever it is. That's the call to prayer. They all go down and they do their prostration and so forth. Apparently, Shiites and Sunnis do it differently. And he said that police would be there with their bamboo rods. And if you were doing it the Shiite way. He also said at one point, again,
doing Byzantine.
yeah, I like that, right. A non-Christian might not even notice the difference. He said at one point in school, again, he's younger than I am, so I don't know about today, right? But he said at one point in school, teacher pointed him out to the class and said, he is a Shiite. That's worse than being a Jew. Ooh.
Recess, kid.
In the East, I'm done with recess. That's right. Enjoy recess now. Yes, in the Saudi scale of insults, that was pretty high. So it's very bitter. The assault on you, but it's a real assault. Just today, I was reading about the Just today, we're reading about the Saracen assault on Italy in the late 9th, early 10th century. Uh, yeah, sacked St. Peter's. That's when the wall was built to defend the Vatican. It's been added to over the days. The wall is still there, which allowed a certain amount of slings and arrows to be shot at the Vatican when it made remarks about not building walls. But the wall was there to protect St. Peter's after the Muslim sacking. Quite heavy fighting. Only ended in 915 when Pope John the 10th organized a coalition of Rome, the Byzantines, and the Italo-Byzantines in Naples and Capua, and crushed the Arab invasion that by this time they'd been running around that part of Italy for a generation, but finally crushed it at the Battle of the River Gagliano in 915. So the assaults on Europe have been overwhelmingly Sunni, under different powers and different authorizations. Very, very serious attacks. I've got another game. The prequel to Here I Stand.
Here I come.
Here I come. Tantamonta, which is a game about the rise of Spain. But one of the events in the game, and the rise of Spain and the recovery of France after the 100 Years' War, and then the two of them coming into conflict over who runs Italy. But one of the background events in the game is the Ottoman capture of Otranto in 1480. And one of the more startling things that Pope Francis did, startling in the sense of, he actually recognized it, was his beatification, long-delayed beatification of the martyrs of Otranto. The city of Otranto was captured by the Ottomans in 1480, and the inhabitants were told, become Muslim or die. And several thousand, it's really impressive. Several thousand inhabitants of Otranto said, fine, kill us. We're not going to become Muslim. So the Sultan had ambitions of conquering Italy. In fact, Suleiman the Magnificent, the Ottoman player's ruler in Here I Stand, at one point he boasted that he would stable his horses in St. Peter's. So a streak of that ideology, a streak of it. You can't say it's necessarily typical, but there's a streak of thinking that Islam has to win military victories.
Validity of its faith.
Yes. And particularly when, to follow up the conquest of New Rome with the conquest of Old Rome. But that ambition of conquering Italy, Suleiman had died. He was replaced by the entertainingly named Selim the Sot. And under him, that ambition died at the Battle of Lepanto. Miguel de Cervantes.
Lepanto was 1192?
Oh no, 1570, 1576. 1571. 1571. Miguel de Cervantes, the great novelist, fantastic novelist. Everyone should read the Quixote. It's a good reason to learn Spanish. Just read the Quixote. He was a Spanish Marine at Lepanto. He insisted on getting out of sickbay to fight. His left hand was mangled. And years later, he said, many people consider this hand ugly, but I consider it beautiful because it got this way doing the best day's work in centuries. When the world learned what a mistake it was to think that the Turk was invincible. So has it been a constant effort? No, but it has been repeated. There's a streak, and this is why, should put this, part of the emotional material for the rise of Islamism at the end of the 19th century through the 20th century into the 21st. Part of the emotional material for that has just been the shock of Islamic armies being defeated. This is not supposed to happen. God's on our side. Again, universal, no. Ups and downs of it. It surges and recedes, but it has surged more than once. Blaise Pascal made this observation, made two observations, and they're still valid. Not that I want to attack, right? But there's a difference in tone. Consider this. Muhammad ordered that a woman caught in adultery be stoned. Jesus said, let the one without sin be the first to cast a stone. There's a difference there. Christianity's first expansion was the preaching of the apostles. First expansion of Islam was by the sword. Amazing military victories.
Obviously Turkish?
Oh, no.
Or no, these were...
No. The initial victories of Islam were Arab. It was astonishing. One of the turning points in history. And there must have been a certain political genius to Muhammad. He was able to unite the Arabs, whose specialty before that was not being united.
Right.
They provided mercenaries, and quite ferocious mercenaries, for the Persian Empire, for the Greco-Roman Empire. And they fought each other enthusiastically. Very, very enthusiastically.
Being only loyal to certain small tribal groups.
And kingdoms and cities.
Okay.
To unite the Arabs, this was astonishing. Utterly unexpected. The Greco-Roman and the Persian empires had just finished. Foolishly, the Persian king, Croesus II, insisted on a fight to the death with the Greco-Roman Empire. Epic stuff, by the way. At one point, the Persians were winning overwhelmingly, sacked Jerusalem, carried off the true cross, destroyed the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Some people get sloppy. That destruction was not done by Muslims. That was the Persian Empire at a stage when it was Zoroastrian. So attacking Constantinople, desperate defense of Constantinople, deliverance against the odds, attributed to the intercession of the Virgin, imperial counterattack that ends with a victory by the emperor himself near the ruins of ancient Nineveh. So defeated the Persian Empire. At that very moment, while this epic war was happening, the Arabs are unifying under Muhammad, then under the first caliphs. This new force exploded out of Arabia. Perfect moment. The Persian Empire was mortally wounded by that war against the Greco-Roman Empire. The Greco-Roman Empire was reeling from the effects of the war. So it was a perfect moment. That does not take away from the military success of it, which still commands some admiration. Central event, the Battle of Yarmouk, basically in what's now Syria. Central event. The main Greco-Roman army was defeated. And after that, the non-Greek parts of that empire fell away, and Syria, Egypt came under Islamic rule and remained under Islamic rule. But fantastic military success, but definitely more than one. Very remarkable characters. But definitely, and during all of this, by the way, there's the original split between Shiite and Sunni. A split so bitter that even though it happened in the 7th century over who was going to be the caliph, the Shiite position being that it had to be the blood of the prophet, the Sunni position being no, needed to be the consensus of the community, which was a nice way of saying whoever had the most muscle. But you can't say, it's not virtuous to say whoever has the most muscle. You say, oh, the consensus of the community, obviously expressed through the muscle.
there's never nothing like 1,000 men showing up outside your tent to help raise some consensus.
Help develop the consensus.
Like, my goodness, I got some consensus with my coffee this morning.
Yes. Well, that's why the part of the emotional energy of Shia Islam has been the religious on steroids version of the Highland Scots Bonnie Prince Charlie thing.
There's an underdog energy to it.
And the rightful heir,
There.
the rightful line of caliphs was overthrown or never allowed to rule.
Was out consensus.
Yes.
Interesting.
That's never healed.
Yeah. Is it true to say that the Sunni branch of Islam has been materially more successful ever since? Is that generally true to say?
Yes. The history of Shia Islam is a history of frustration.
They're the Jews of the Muslim world.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree to that.
It is.
It's a little too hot.
It is a history of frustration. I'll put it that way. That they seem, more than once, they've seemed to come to power only to fail. There are different versions of Shia Islam too, and that gets very complicated. Very complicated depending on exactly the rightful heirs in Shia Islam are the imams, and at some point they disappear from view. So the hidden imam. And depending on what brand of Shia Islam you adhere to, you have different ideas about which imam was the hidden imam and under what eschatological circumstances he will reemerge.
This is the sort of thing that's fueled modern stories like Nickelodeon's Avatar or the Matrix, like the hidden, the hidden one coming to light.
I don't know.
Interesting.
It's not generally Muslim. It's very specifically Shiite.
Right. Whereas stories like Matrix or Avatar have such a quasi-Eastern
They do.
bent that I wouldn't want to claim a connection without looking into it further.
That might be worth looking at.
Yeah.
There's been a tendency because of that eschatological twist, the emergence of the hidden imam, the end times, different ideas about what that means under what circumstances.
By golly, nuclear weapon will bring it about.
Yeah.
Even Frank Herbert's Dune series has traces.
Manifestly. There, I have no doubt. Yeah. He had that quite explicitly in mind. I liked the first Dune.
You liked the first one?
I did.
Oh, interesting. I was under the impression that you disliked the whole series.
Oh, no. I read the first novel, thoroughly enjoyed it, read the second one, and I said, he had a good idea, but this is just going in weird places.
Interesting.
Is that because of Paul's character?
Yes.
He just kind of goes crazy.
Yes. I did not like the development of Paul Atreides.
Why is it?
I thought it was a novel that didn't need a sequel.
I said in the last 50 years, our storytellers have had this allergic reaction to a hero that you can actually root for the entire arc of his story. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is why Game of Thrones, right? People say, have you watched
I would, oh my, you drive me to drink crystal whiskey.
What's there to watch?
Horrible.
People be selfish.
My brother suggested that I read Game of Thrones. So I read the first one. I thought, not bad. It got some clever ideas. Read the second one. At one point, I just quite literally threw it across the room. And I said, if I can lapse a little bit into slight vulgarity, it's true that some people look at the world through rose-colored glasses, but this man looks at the world through shit-colored glasses. It's just one bad thing after another. And in real life, good things happen. They do. Good things happen. It's not one succession of catastrophes.
Yeah.
That says something about his imagination. Clever. This is real imagination there. I think he will never use 10 words where 200 will suffice. Uh, there's
The importance of an editor, right?
the importance of an editor.
Be strong enough to tell someone you are saying too much.
And sloppy storytelling in profound contrast to the great J.R.R. Tolkien. He worked out his story before he wrote the book. But very clearly, this fella
He worked out his arc.
he worked out the story. Who's going to do what? He worked out the languages for the story. He worked out the history behind the story. He worked out the geography. It's really interesting to look at his drawings down through the years, how that evolved, but he worked it out. It's clear this man was making the story up as he went along. So you'll be following. It really disgusted me. That's why I threw the second novel across the room. You'll be following a story arc, and then suddenly it ends. Oh, they all die. That's it. Well, you just wasted a considerable amount of time and space. And either you're playing with your audience, which is bad, or more likely, you start developing this, didn't know where it was going to go, so you just abort it.
Pack of wolves come down and eat everybody.
Yeah. So I do not think, despite some clever imagination and occasional good writing, I do not think it is that they are good works of literature. I think that the HBO series, though it occasionally bordered upon graphic, I think the HBO series was better storytelling, but they had the same problem because he didn't know how the blasted blazes thing was going to end. They didn't know how it was going to end. And I think at the end, they thought, well, we do have to conclude it. Something has to, we have to conclude it. There has to be.
Land.
The plane has to land and not be shot down, but it was shut down. It was a messy ending and deeply unsatisfying.
We got to get the plane on the ground. Well, you interpreted that as get the plane on the ground. I meant you need to land the plane. Right. When I said get the plane on the ground, I wasn't saying in whatever fashion is the most expedient.
I think it's kind of the Madagascar. Madagascar, it's like, oh, great news. What's the great news? We're gonna land soon. Oh, that's good. Bad news is we're crashing.
I like that.
Yeah, I like the penguins in Madagascar.
Funny.
I enjoyed it.
I thought the penguins were smart.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Cartoon that's not painful for an adult to watch.
Right.
Those are my big childhood memories, by the way. My mother would take us, shows my age, my mother would take us to different Disney cartoons. And honestly, after the early Disney classics, they're mostly not very good. I remember as a kid being taken to 101 or 1,001, however many it was, Dalmatians, and being
Original or the
original, and being tremendously bored. My mother would devoutly take us to these Disney offerings because Disney's good for kids.
That was a real belief. That was a tenet.
Oh, yes.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Very
good for kids.
Disney's good for kids. Yes. They take us these things as profoundly bored. And my mother was bored. She did not enjoy these Disney offerings.
This started what, like after Peter Pan?
Yeah. That may have been the last genuinely good one.
58?
Yeah. That may have been the last genuinely good one. After this, you get into Bambi and blah, blah, blah.
What are we watching here?
This a friend of mine, relative of mine, devout hunter, is terribly alarmed. The other kids are talking about Bambi. He thought his boy had to watch Bambi, but he's going to watch it with him because he's alarmed about that scene where Bambi's mom is taking that leap and in mid-leap gets shot. So how's the kid going to react? So as he tells the story, Bambi's mom takes the leap. She gets shot. He looks at his boy, see how the kid's reacting. And as he tells the story, the kid looked at him and said, "Dad, that was a great shot." Smile.
Yeah.
So she sat through them because she thought she had to, parental duty. She was not enjoying herself. It says something about the quality of Star Wars. Remember this, it's a childhood memory. not only did we kids like it, my mom liked it.
Right.
It wasn't just for kids. It was a good story.
Very good story. Actually, it's so good, in fact, that Disney has admitted that they messed up with 7, 8, and 9.
When did you this?
You're driving me back to the whiskey.
Who said it?
So apparently,
The word in the industry is
yes. So the person they hired to direct, take over Disney, the
Kennedy.
What about her name? Kathleen.
Kathleen Kennedy. Yes.
Apparently, her goal was to destroy Star Wars.
which she did.
She did.
Her goal was to destroy Star Wars. Like she admitted this in some way.
She said she did not want to keep up anything George Lucas had done. Pretty much. Potentially. I don't know if she said those words explicitly.
In so many words.
Yeah.
If by Star Wars you mean the imaginative world created by the first 3 movies,
And she thought this is
and broadly continued by the next 3 movies.
manosphere.
Yes.
Yeah, so she essentially wanted to go away from what Star Wars was about. She wanted to like.
She was to Star Wars what Robespierre was to the French government.
Mm.
Everything needed to change and heads needed to roll.
Yeah. So.
For the new world.
Because everyone hates 7, 8, and 9 so much.
So much.
That they're considering saying it was a failure, writing off all that storyline, and allowing private makers to make their own movies about Star Wars.
That would be a profound act of humility.
Yes.
That I have a hard time seeing coming out of a major studio. But if they do it.
Well, yeah, the reason I think they might, it would be a dramatic act of humility, but honestly, after such cataclysmic failure,
What else is there to try?
what else is there to try?
Well, that's the thing. So with and you can see it like with the movies and things she had influence over, like Mandalorian started out great. Season 2 was terrible. Season 3 was awful.
And I haven't seen any of them. That's
And then they made a Boba Fett series, and then that was all about the Mandalorian. And people were like, what? We get Boba Fett back, and you don't do anything about Boba Fett. So that was awful. And then the Han Solo movie was the
yeah, that's a good way to put it. It was bad, but it did not reignite the spark.
people love Rogue One. Rogue One was great. Did you like Rogue One?
I like the first hour of 7, and I like the last hour of Rogue One.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
First hour
That's not
of
bad.
7, I thought, hey, this is a pretty good movie. And then Chewie and Han magically show up right outside the planet that they've just taken off from in the Millennium Falcon. And I'm like, how did they get here? They just happened to be right there. Actually, no, I'll take that back. I got annoyed a little earlier. It's when they get into the Millennium Falcon. They're running for some other spaceship. That gets blown up. So they say, we're going to go fly in this junk spaceship, which just happens to be ready for takeoff and completely operational by a novice pilot to outfly.
By a novice pilot.
By a novice, you're right. The junk spaceship is ready to be flown by a novice pilot in complete combat environments against presumably professional pilots. And then Han Solo shows up, and that's I kind of lost.
It's not bad. The first hour of 7 and the last hour of Rogue One.
Actually, I would say, and I'll say, with
That's
Rogue
bad.
One, it felt. I actually didn't hate the first half of it. It just seemed like it was taking a little while to get started, like a little while to turn the engine over. I can't fault the movie too badly for that.
Well, particularly because this was, how shall I put this? Even with flaws, Rogue One was actual water in the desert.
Yes.
7, 8, and 9, you're right. 7 had redeeming features, a little bit of water there. But 8 and 9, you're in the middle of the Sahara.
So, yeah,
What are we doing here? What are we here for?
why would you call the team back? Like,
Because they didn't have any other villain. Because
Bad storytelling.
yes, because Ryan Johnson disrespected the previous director of Seven,
you killed off that
right,
guy.
and killed off the bad guy, and didn't have another bad guy lined up. But that goes
Bad storytelling.
yes, bad storytelling, but this is also a product of Kathleen Kennedy not having a directing vision for the story.
Except she wanted it to be highly modern.
She wanted it to be highly modern, but she wanted it to have highly modern affectation without having a vision for the overall arc of the story. And that became extremely obvious. Yeah. When J.J. Abrams set up certain things in Seven, which he has a talent for setting stuff up, but he can never put it in off the green. But anyway,
That's a good metaphor.
but that's a different story. But then Ryan Johnson doesn't respect J.J. Abrams, so he wants to go into a different direction with it. And craps it up so badly that they have no choice but to basically shut him aside and bring J.J. Abrams back.
Who had an impossible job for 9.
Yeah.
But to say how should I put this? One can acknowledge that someone had an impossible task and still say he performed badly.
Oh, I didn't even bother to see it, so
Take my word for it.
I didn't even see 9. What's it?
Surprising. Yes, I wish I'd thought that.
Yeah, man. I could watch my nephew play with his Star Wars Legos and get a better Star Wars story.
I thought halfway through 9, I could be doing something much more interesting, like cleaning my toilet.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, but you're not gonna about spoilers, but so
Yeah, don't
Kylo Ren finds a Sith.
Already spoiled.
Well, did you know? So Kathleen Kennedy, her goal with Kylo Ren was to show the problems of toxic masculinity. That was the emphasis on his role. So just to tell you, like,
Well, if that is the case, they certainly didn't manage to have a stunning exemplar of masculinity.
no. He's trying to be like a big bad, like Darth Vader thing.
It did not work.
Really close.
Yeah, you destroyed your bad guys. There's
Well,
no story, there's no opposition.
Darth Vader was like the perfect story. You have promising young kid
Mhm.
who goes through the trials, becomes the best Jedi Knight,
Well,
gets betrayed.
to go back to 1977, showing my age again, childhood, late, 11 or so, something like that. That my mother enjoyed that movie. Not just we kids enjoyed it. My mother enjoyed it. And part of it was and again, she didn't know the story arc, right? 77, A New Hope. You don't know the story arc behind Darth Vader. All you knew was he is a marvelously menacing villain. Nothing ridiculous about him. He's just menacing. He's menacing.
Shit, too. He's there to get the job done.
Got to get the job done, and utterly ruthless about getting the job done. And a splendid hero in the sense of well-intentioned, sincerely well-intentioned, willing to learn, but darn, needing to learn a lot. And that's credible, as opposed to the instant, no training needed superheroine deployed in the Kathleen Kennedy fantasies. Luke is a wonderful hero, precisely because there's an awful lot he didn't know and couldn't do yet. And he needed a lot of training and a lot of guidance.
Right. People will get after that particular criticism. They say, well, there's more scenes of Rey training with old Luke in number 8 than there is with Luke training with Yoda. Right. And they're like, well, minute by minute, Rey has more training. But what does Rey do at the end of it? She goes and just completely kicks ass doing things that she didn't train to do,
Didn't
by
train
the
to do.
way.
It is so crucial for, again, 77, obviously massive childhood memory. I've never entirely recovered from it. It captivated me. And again, my mother liked it. This didn't happen. She didn't do movies. She took this devoutly. I only remember two that she got enthusiastic about. Enthusiastic. Star Wars and
Raiders?
Close Encounter. No, not
Oh.
Raiders. She was too biblically literate, and Raiders is good grief. No, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But she was a musician, rest her soul. And that theme of communicating through music, oh, that got her. But anyway, then already captivated by Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back. And it is part of the power of that movie that you have this big build up when Luke fights Darth Vader and Luke loses. He was told, you're not ready for this. He did it anyway for good reason, but he wasn't ready for it. He loses. And again, in the story, of course, Han Solo is providentially in a position to save him. Darth Vader spares him. This is where the story begins to be revealed. I'm your father. Does not kill him. And tries to win him over. And Luke chooses to plummet rather than accept that and is miraculously rescued. But so crucial for the power of that movie and setting up for the next one that build up the fight with Darth Vader, and it's a fight he loses. Darth Vader himself says, impressive, but nonetheless, he loses.
It keeps the tension going into the third one.
Keeps tension going into the third one.
They didn't know what to do.
No,
The Last Jedi. Just didn't know.
Inferior storytelling. Partly because of your point earlier. In order to tell a good story, you have to like your hero.
And liking your hero doesn't equate to making him perfect.
Right.
And that's what they do with the transgender.
They couldn't. There was, I think, a philosophical belief that a female hero with flaws was unacceptable. Oh, right. She has to be everything that any situation might possibly ask of her to be.
Right.
She is everything that any situation possibly asks her to be, with the possible exception of some things that happened in the first one. Which is why the first one I don't think is a complete disaster.
And it's not.
It's not a complete disaster. She struggles a bit here and there. But from the second one on, it's just there's no tension because they very willingly gave her any ability that the plot could possibly ask for, and all of a sudden she had that ability.
Oh, yes, exactly.
How she able to do mind
control, force healing, expert combat skill,
Everything.
It's like all the things that each master took a long time
Mhm.
to actually be good at. Like, Qui-Gon was relatively good mind controller, but he wasn't perfect. Like, he didn't get it every time.
And he dies because he's not the best lightsaber duelist, but she's this and this and this and this. And you criticize it, and unfortunately that was taken as a criticism of female-led stories. But it's like, no, we'd be just as critical if this is a male-led story. You can't have human heroes that are essentially archangels in disguise and expect people to be invested.
Very true.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's cool, because like in episode 1 when Qui-Gon gets stabbed, and like Kenobi can't do anything.
Can't do anything about it.
And then that just gets him so enraged that he like essentially goes through that mental, allows him to defeat them all. But you're all like at the edge of your seats, like, is he gonna be a Sith now? You know, like, because he's going in the way of the Sith.
I think the prequels could have been done better if Obi-Wan had been the central character. I think that would have been very interesting.
I agree.
Yeah. And Anakin's there, and his arc towards becoming a Jedi, then his downfall to becoming a Sith is in there, right? But again, I think Lucas, unfortunately, had lost a little bit of his touch. People accuse him of becoming essentially a king with a court, so that the only people around him were people who said yes to his every idea. That's the accusation against him. Where in the 70s, he was director or creative director of certain things, but he wasn't such a institution in Hollywood that people could push back against him.
I think of Louis IX. Louis IX, his advice for being king, part of his advice for being king, is you don't say first what you want to have happen. You have an idea of it. But if you say your idea, everybody's going to agree with you.
So you feel obligated to agree with you.
So you wait, you find out what the people around you are thinking while they feel able to speak freely before you've expressed your opinion. And then when you've heard them out, you respond. And maybe you were moved from your original position by part of what they had to say, or by their interchange. But in any case, you have allowed them to contribute to the process. So they're not just underlings. And it is a better process than the leader just coming in.
Here's what we're doing.
Here's what we're doing. Everybody obediently salutes and goes and does it. Because the wise leader knows he has to lead, but he also knows he has limitations. So people do have to feel free to speak to him. And if he's too quick to express his opinion, they won't feel free to express theirs.
Because you don't even have to be a yes man to be hesitant.
To be a little hesitant, right? Even if you're not a natural yes man.
The leader.
Yeah.
Right.
He's the leader after all.
Right.
He's the boss.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was part of Louis' advice.
Can we jump back by Iran?
We can go back to Iran. Yes.
I have enjoyed this little foray into film.
Into Star Wars.
Ugh.
Ooh.
Well, it's part of my larger complaint about we made such good stories once upon a time. How is it that how did we forget how to tell good stories?
It's an interesting question.
It's my same complaint about how did we forget to make good architecture? God, we didn't forget. We turned on it.
You turned on it.
You don't forget Corinthian columns.
You
decide that Corinthian columns are to something, right?
You want to do something new.
Right.
But successful innovations, say the Gothic, springing from the Romanesque, successful innovations play with what came before. They spring from what came before. They do not merely reject it. And that, yes, the central error of modern architecture was, we don't need the past.
Don't need the past. Huh. Do you think Impressionism is actually still playing with the traditions of, say, the French Academy?
It is. I don't think the modern art fell off the table or fell off the wagon until after that. I think Impressionism was a valid continuation of what went before. There wasn't this, we reject the past, we want to do something completely new and different. Completely new and different is not easy to do.
Oh, I mean, that's the profound thing about Impressionism is that you do look at Impressionist works and you have to be impressed because
Be impressed.
no one told them to do that,
Exactly.
right? And it is different and and it's
But
I
like
wouldn't say breaking some rules, but
but like the beginning of the Gothic, it's similar.
Mhm.
Something unmistakably new and excitingly new, but springing from what went before.
Mhm.
So in a way, what if we made this?
Stone could fly.
Yeah.
Right.
What would we do to let more light into this building? Ooh, bigger windows without weakening the building. Ooh, what if we had a buttress?
Hmm.
And suddenly it became possible to have a building. The Saint-Chapelle in Paris is the outstanding example of this after Gothic been going for a couple of generations, or 3 generations. Just a building bathed in the interior, bathed in colored light.
Yes. I visited it. It was a cloudy day, so I got a sense of it.
Got a sense of
Maybe
it,
not the full, not
the full splendor of
yeah,
it.
full splendor. It was a cloudy January,
Hmm.
but I was there.
You were there. So we want to go back to Iran.
We go back to Iran,
I can do that.
which does not have any Gothic architecture.
So it's,
My question
though it has interesting architecture.
it does. Um, we have this ceasefire. If the ceasefire ends, what do we shoot at from here? Like,
Well,
I guess this is something that I struggle with. Maybe I don't have good news sources, which is another question I'd like to ask you
that's a
about.
big question.
But what
Can
would
I?
we not hit? Do you hit more highways? Do you hit more bridges? I mean, like, it seemed to me that in the first go round that any viable military target was already targeted. So
Yes.
yeah.
Now, there are some remaining military targets, but you're right. The high value military targets have been taken out. And that's worth remembering
Mhm.
that the military potential of that grotesque regime. And you're right, Tom, you're right. To remind people of the horrors and crimes committed by that grotesque regime.
Killed more Americans than any other country.
And they're-
You know, people. And Trump warned them, I counted 8 times on Truth Social before he went in. He said, don't kill protesters, we will come after them. So he was very blunt about it. He was like,
Yes. Well, as I said earlier, they weren't just giving the middle finger to the United States, they're giving the middle finger to their own people. It is purely loathsome regime.
and when they did get attacked by the US, this is just a added point, they attacked 11 neighboring countries.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Rockets.
Not only is it a loathsome regime, it's also a fundamentally stupid regime.
Yeah.
So it's isolated. It's isolated and militarily weak. All it can do is play a silly game of uh,
Thrashing about.
thrashing about. The Western press, compulsively anti-American. As I said, that Afghan war veteran, he said he never hated anyone in the Taliban, even though they occasionally tried to kill him. The one person he really hated was a British journalist, a clearly establishment leftist British journalist, than which there is nothing more irritating in the entire planet. There are things more evil, but nothing more simply irritating. Um, yes, like a piece of wood stuck into your fingernail. It's not going to kill you, but darn, it's irritating.
Darn, is it going to keep you up at night?
Exactly. So yeah, they take the thrashing about of the regime very seriously and breathtakingly. It's weak. It's isolated. Uh, it is to a significant degree defanged. The difficulty is uh, it will not acknowledge defeat, and there's no non-nasty way of making them do so. Let me explain. Much bigger war, right? But still, summer of 1945. Japan's navy had been sunk. It was gone. Japan's air force had been blown up. Gone. Japan's cities were defenseless. A highly efficient American campaign of unrestricted submarine warfare. We were angry about the Germans doing this in World War I, but we did it in spades in World War II against Japan with extreme efficiency. An extremely efficient American campaign of unrestricted submarine warfare backed by aerial attacks had destroyed the Japanese merchant marine. The country's not getting food.
We're starving.
They're starving. They're not getting fuel. They're freezing in the winter. By any reasonable measure, Japan had lost. How to get them to admit that they lost and to stop thrashing about and doing some damage as they thrash about. This is our dilemma. Famously, the dilemma was resolved by the two atomic bombs. So very different situation, less grave, but similar one. By every rational measure, Iran is defeated. No navy, no army, no air force, not all that much of an army. Certainly without very effective modern weapons. It's able to lob a few inaccurate rockets in the general direction of someone they don't like, but they don't even do that much anymore. Those are mostly taken out or used. Thrashes about, makes grandiose statements. Japan, 1945, specialized in grandiose statements. But any rational measure, defeat, not going to admit it. How do you make them admit it? We can't do anything really nasty.
Oh, you thoroughly nasty.
And they couldn't admit it. They're not rational actors. They are capable of killing several thousand of their own people. They are capable of public hangings of 19-year-old athletes. They are capable of.
Well, they must have their goons. Where do they out of what population do they draw their security forces?
Every society has goons. We have goons. Obviously, if you give your goons an official government role, so just as the Nazi regime established the SS as a counterweight to the regular German army, the Iranian regime has the Republican Guard as a counterweight to the regular army. It's the goon squad. Not part of the normal military chain of command, recruited from natural goons, but natural goons who are propagandized to believe that they are doing their goonery in defense, in God's name.
In the name of God.
Yes, in defense of righteousness and goodness and so that's just a profoundly evil idea. In the very long run, it failed the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union did a similar kind of thing. There's the regular army, but you also had the KGB, which wasn't just spies and police. There were KGB military units. You had the Interior Ministry, which wasn't just national parks. It had its military units. So the idea was that the regime would be secure. Then in the end, the regime lost its will because the country was obviously failing. But a regime that is fed by a twisted religious ideology, I don't know. Now, the Soviet regime didn't fall until after it had, say, 1918 to 1991. So it had 73 years. I believe these regimes have a life cycle.
3 generations is
That's 3 generations of misery.
tutorial life cycle.
Yeah, a lifetime of misery. Well, the Iranian Revolution, the ghastly Iranian regime was established by the deeply evil Ayatollah Khomeini. The New York Times, which specializes in being wrong about big things, with amazing consistency, remarkable consistency. If the New York Times told me that the moon orbits the Earth, I would want to see that from another source.
You'd be inclined to say, what moon?
The what moon, yes. It's an amazing ability to be wrong about big things. The New York Times back in 78 said, well, we should give the Ayatollah a chance. How did that work out? He was an evil man, evil, and all the more evil because he invoked God for all of his tyranny, all of his whiskered tyrannizing. As one relative of mine who's normally rather politically correct, but if you get a little bit of alcohol in him, that will slip away and his more entertaining natural self will come out. So there has to be something wrong with a religion that thinks that women should be dressed like goats and men look like billy goats. But yes, women dressed like ghosts and the men with these weird beards like billy goats. But anyway, that regime only came to power in 1978. If it has anything like the life cycle, I don't think this is, any kind of, you can't apply any kind of statistical precision to this, but there's probably something to this, right? You have to wait until the true believers croak. So, 1918, there were true believers in the Soviet thing. The last of those true believers, ruthless, always stupid sometimes, but true believers, then willing to kill lots of people for their true belief. You had to wait until the last of the true believers, still intoxicated by memories of their youth.
Glorious youth.
The glorious youth, Wordsworth's famous lines about the French Revolution, which he came to regret. But looking back, he tried to describe what it felt like to be young then. Bliss was it in that dawn to be alive, but to be young, was very heaven. So even if they were killing people and risking their lives, still, it was for the cause. And there's youthful excitement about that and nostalgia about it as you grow older. The Soviet Union, even though it was failing badly, it couldn't fall until the generation that had true believers expired. So 1918, basically the wretched thing was doomed by the time you get to 1983. Because by that time, 65 years have passed, and all the true believers still intoxicated by the dream are gone. So unfortunately, and then the true believers pass it on to some goons, but the goons can't keep it going.
They don't have the intelligence. They don't have
Right. They don't have the intelligence. They don't have the drive. They just have standard goonery, which only goes so far. And standard goonery doesn't sustain you against any kind of real danger. You're going to have to wait 68 years, 65 years. That would put us, and I don't claim statistical precision for this, but unfortunately, if it's like that, God help them, that would put us in 2043. You have to wait until the true believers die. I can't believe, I really do think that younger generations are not true believers. They recruit some thugs from the younger generations, but by and large, they are not true believers. I'm convinced of that.
Especially the women, I don't know if you've seen a lot of there's a lot of like ones that escaped that live in America and they're telling the history behind it. But there's even people in Iran and like, we're not Muslims, they're like, we're Persians.
Well, that's very true.
And we don't want to be part of this Muslim religion. And apparently only 30% of the population is Muslim now in Iran. Like most of the monster movies, you know?
It's hard to measure, but I'm sure
Like, I guess one of
there is
the,
much reason to believe that the life of this particular version of Shia Islam has been badly damaged by being hijacked by this regime. It becomes impossible for younger generations to take seriously uh, a religion that is invoked by these aging fanatics uh, to ruin their country. And it's a ruined country.
yeah, like kind of showing some of the immense courage of some of these centuries, mostly Iranian women.
And you better have courage.
One of them was this girl, and she had a picture of the Ayatollah. She had a cigarette. She lit the cigarette and then burned his picture. And she locked it. And she looked like a normal Western girl, like a jacket, like hair down and everything. And I was like, now that is the kind of Iranian people.
That's brave.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that that's in place. If I'm right, that's a big if, right? But if I'm right, Iran today might be the Soviet Union in 1965. Uh, True believers are fading away. Uh, each younger generation is less and less convinced this is the way to go. The regime's going to fail. When I don't know. Clearly, I don't know.
And they failed to even cultivate any regional allies.
Well, they're in trouble where they do. They lob missiles at all their neighbors.
Right. They maybe have some strategic allies in China, perhaps.
China's a rational actor.
Mhm.
Did you hear what he said? Their official tweet from China was to Iran is like, we cannot aid you in military support, but we'll give you morale. That was a tweet.
Morale.
Moral support.
Hmm.
Yeah, China's a rational actor. Connecting yourself, you're a rational actor opposed to a rival to the United States. I play these war games, right? So I make the distinction between an opponent and a real enemy. I believe it's a valid distinction. An opponent pursues certain goals that are at variance with your goals, but they're not necessarily out to kill you. So you want to pursue your goals, in some respects, thwart them without provoking, without stumbling into a real war. You move from opponent to enemy. So we did that with the Soviet Union rather successfully, all in all. All in all, there were bad moments like Vietnam. That's a long moment, but on the whole, honestly, we handled the Cold War well. I've got a good game of the Cold War too, by the way. It's a two-player game. But anyway,
So is the Cold War.
so is the Cold War. So rational actor. If you're a rational actor, you don't want to tie yourself too closely to a possible ally who is not entirely sane. Because that possible ally who is not entirely sane can drag you into stuff that you don't want to get into. And I think China is very focused on realistic goals, uh, not necessarily goals that are compatible with ours, but basically realistic goals. They want to dominate East Asia. In particular, they'd like to annex Taiwan and become more prosperous. And their demographic situation presents a challenge to that. But so does the energy situation. They do not want to get, and I applaud the strategic sense of this, they don't want to get involved in a mess in the Middle East. Simple enough. And if the Iranians thought that, if the Iranian government ever thought that China was going to get involved in a mess in the Middle East, I don't think they understood the Chinese. They don't mind the United States having trouble, but they're gonna. It's not trouble they want. It's not their interest.
And if you support Iran with them essentially destroying all of our allies in the Middle East, I'm not gonna get any of those allies probably later.
Exactly. Iran has made so many enemies. They're incomprehensible.
Well, the regime has made so
The regime has made so many
They
enemies.
basically have they've written their own death warrant in the sense that even if they survive this debacle with the United States,
That's a doomed regime.
they can't hand off their authority to some other generation because their own people, I imagine, hate them and all their neighbors hate them.
Yes, a doomed regime. It can't be kept going by mere thuggery forever.
Hmm.
But thuggery can keep it going for a while.
Hmm.
But it's a doomed regime. The normal people, before things were totally icy between the United States and Iran, at one point, people I know, U.S. wrestling team was in Iran. Goodwill sort of thing. And story's just slightly off color, but it is to make a point. So the guys were messing around with each other, and one group of guys was banging on they're in a hotel, they're banging on the door of the room the other guys were in. And the other guys were just getting really tired of it. Uh, young guys doing stupid games. At one point, there was another knock on the door, and young American wrestler, just totally fed up with this, stormed out of the shower, stark naked, opened the door to rebuke his friends, and there were a couple uh, of Iranian hotel workers who were there to deliver some room service, and they stared at him, and he stared at them. Then he closed the door, and he thought, "Oh, there's going to be trouble." But all that happened, all he heard was hysterical giggling from the two Iranian girls, and the guys realized, they're reacting like anybody else. There wasn't this Satan. So I'm quite convinced that the bulk of the population. This is why our next step can't be one that hurts the bulk of the population, which places some limit on further options. The bulk of the population would like to get out from under this horrid regime. They don't know how because they're totally unarmed.
They have no leader.
And they have no leader. And they're totally unarmed. So they're the mercy of the thugs.
Mm-hmm.
Thugs with an ugly little uniform and guns.
Guns help.
No, makes a difference.
Team Trump, is there gonna do more of those public canings with Iranian women? And Trump told them, he was like, "You better not do this," and they were all spared.
We still have the ability to strike, and we certainly demonstrate an ability to strike at the Iranian leadership.
Why is there such an immense weight of public commentary saying that the United States is losing in over its head, has no plan, is been outwitted and outmatched by the Iranians? Where is this all coming from?
Fantasy. For a certain segment of the European elite, the United States must be wrong.
And that European elite influences certain elements of the American.
Yes, Europe must know best. Europe must know best. Even at the very moment when it's clear that the traditional leaders of Europe are being despised by large numbers of their own people. But their response to that, the established leadership response to that, is to insult their own people. Hello. The absurd British Prime Minister's response to disastrous local elections was to denounce the opposition as really, truly evil people. And this is what we are up against. The people who know better. He's a very earnest man. If one were to write a biography of Mr. Stammer, one could entitle it The Annoyance of Being Earnest. Never is there a flicker of irony. Never is there a flicker of humor, just earnest, always very earnest. That may be the single most slappable face in public affairs, partly because it is unfailingly, relentlessly earnest. The annoyance of being earnest. But still, establishment voice carries some weight, even if there are big stirrings of popular unrest and irritation and disgust. It's not an easy thing to say, I don't care what respectable opinion says. I don't care what the London Times says. I don't care what the New York Times says. I don't care. That's a Declaration of Independence, by the way. If you can say, I don't care what respectable opinion says.
Exactly what Trump said.
That's true. That's true.
You just care about what the critics says. I wouldn't think about it.
It really doesn't. Yeah, it's sometimes crude, too often crude. I think you got to find sense. I think there's a wild sense of humor, and some people just don't appreciate that wild sense of humor. But I'd much rather a man like that than, again, to pick on the British Prime Minister, a man who gives no indication of the slightest sense of irony or humor or even anger. Really, it's just always very earnest. And it's annoying. The annoyance of being earnest.
It's that done nothing.
But no, it's remarkable. A man who led the way to his thorough electoral victory only 2 years ago. It's been a very rapid transition. But only a few. So generalizing the basis of very few people. But I will not hesitate. The few young Britons I know, few, right? But the few young Britons I know, and one thing that struck me about them is maybe 5 years ago, not that long, 3, 4 years ago, they had lost all confidence in the established parties. All confidence in a way that's not too surprising. The recent results are not too surprising, although the demographic range of the voters is extensive. Loss of confidence in the established parties. Not totally dissimilar to things here. People make fun of Ocasio-Cortez. I know someone, a voter in her electoral district, and he explained it to me. In that district, if you're the Democratic candidate, you'll win the election. That's guaranteed. If you're the Democratic candidate, you could be caught on film sacrificing puppies to Cthulhu, and they would still vote for you because you're the Democratic candidate and Republicans are bad. So
Republicans are the sort of people who sacrifice kittens to Cthulhu.
yes. But he said, you have to understand, the man she replaced was the sort of man who hasn't had an original idea in 30 years. And he's been in Congress like 30 years, perpetually reelected because he's got the D after his name and the party establishment behind him. Hasn't originated in 30 years. He probably hasn't even had an unoriginal idea in 10. And his whole thing is a picture, and there has to be one of everything in the picture. And that is just so the annoyance of being earnest.
Wait, when you say one of everything, you mean there has to be a woman, there has to be a Hispanic, there has to be a black man,
and one of everything
could possibly be gay.
Yes, one of everything in the picture, absolutely necessary. That was his one thing, only thing he stood for. Photo op and one of everything in the picture. Yeah, compared to that, Ocasio-Cortez is a breath of fresh air, and that was her rise when she overthrew him in the primary, which is the real election in that district. So I think it's a general thing that Trump is a version of that on a national scale. I remember the Republican debates in 2016. He was the only one who showed personality.
Yeah.
I think Marco Rubio actually has a personality, but he was convinced in 2016 that you had to keep your personality under wraps. And he did keep his personality under wraps. It was not a very good performance. Yeah, Trump was a breath of.
Marco Rubio was playing from the normal playbook.
He was playing from the normal establishment playbook, which again is
served everyone fairly well for what, 50 years?
Well, how should I put this? Politicians lived in fear of making a gaffe, that stupid word. And in their fear of being accused of having made a gaffe, they were deliberately boring.
Right, but this was coming out of an environment in which H.W. Bush was criticized for glancing at his watch during a debate.
Right.
A gaffe was rightly to be feared for many years, yes?
It was partly fear is to a great degree a state of mind. And the weird genius of Trump was to say, if I show that I don't care, my voters are not going to care. It's a gaffe. Who cares? Let the fact checkers descend. Nobody likes fact checkers. Nobody does like them. It's the annoyance of being earnest. Nobody likes them. The fact checker is a disaster in a party. As a matter of fact, it's not 17%, it's 12.26%. You have exaggerated concern. Shut up. They're insufferable people.
Well, actually, if we look at this closely,
What's that?
like people that push up their glasses. Well, actually,
Yes, I push up my glasses again, although I never push them up like that. Try to avoid that. That's an undesirable gesture. Use both hands.
Yeah, the first president of the college, his legal defense sometimes say, yes, Your Honor.
Ooh.
Yeah, he said they never caught on.
They never caught.
Yeah.
With his personality, I can
Yes.
I can see that. That's entirely believable.
There's a strong element of I don't care what you think.
Yes, that's entirely believable. Well, yeah, and that's and in a way, though with our excesses, but really, it's fundamentally liberating. Decide I don't have to care if Newsweek, New York Times, LA Times, Chicago Tribune, whatever, CNN, ABC, PBS, whatever in the alphabet soup, I don't have to care. If they decide I made a gaffe, I don't have to care. And there's a central insight. If I don't care, my voters won't care, provided that they believe I'm on their side.
Right. Well, this is the fundamental difference between people who try to convince Trump supporters that, oh, look at the things he said, look at the things he's done. He's so crude, he's so belligerent, he's so this, he's so that. It just essentially seems to boil down to like, well, he's such a son of a bitch. And his supporters are basically
so many words.
He's a son of a bitch. What do you want us to say? We've been looking for a son of a bitch for 40 years.
That's right.
Yes, we agree. We actually might agree with you.
Ooh, that's an important point.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want him. This is what they say in so many words. I wouldn't want him as my minister. I wouldn't want him as teaching my children's school. But I believe that he's going to stand up for us in his office. Mm-hmm. He's going to stand up for us. And he's not going to be intimidated.
I don't want him to be my pastor.
Right.
Well, I think that's an important thing that I think might be one of the reasons why, like we were just discussing before the channel, like art's gone away, storytelling's gone away, all those good things we had. It's because no one has the confidence in themselves to state what they actually think. And
I agree with that partially. I think in the case of architecture, for example, the people who changed the landscape of architecture in the early 20th century really did believe everything's got to go.
well, here's the thing.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I think they actually were revolutionary to believe their own creed.
Speaking to an architect not long ago, his perspective, right? Because I'm not an architect myself, but he said, the main architecture schools, they definitely push the continuing modernist agenda.
Mhm.
But he said, it's a little like what I said about the Soviet Union and Iran. Uh, there's a there's a steadily decay of confidence in it
Mm.
in the lower levels of architecture. That this is what they push in the school, but people don't like it. As a matter of fact, I don't like it.
And I think you're exactly right, and I think what I'm seeing is that they said, we'll do whatever to do whatever. And Trump says, no, this is what I see is the truth, and I'm gonna say it. Even if it's brash and harsh, people say
Well,
it.
also, and this just drives some people crazy, and I've got a streak of wanting to be exact about details myself. He doesn't care about statistical accuracy when he's saying something. Uh, he tosses off the number that he seems to remember. And that sometimes some people raise a great fuss about this, but the president's job is to have the big picture, and somebody can take him aside later. So, Mr. President, this is the actual number, but it's really not his job to be, again, the annoyance of being earnest. It's actually not his job to have all the data at his fingertips. He's not
Like
the
in Dune, even you wouldn't want the mentat to be.
You don't want the mentat in charge. Emphatically not. You want the mentat there to be an advisor,
Mm.
but you don't want the mentat in charge. No.
But I think, yeah, that's kind of it. It's like people with their modern art or like modern fat beauty, like right, these things are like fat is the new pretty. It's like, okay, they're just
Yeah.
being weird.
And to some extent, that's a natural reaction to a certain tyranny, right? Where women in particular were hectored about having one specific body type, and that is absurd. So
Because nature does not provide for
nature does not do one particular body type. One particular body type that is difficult to attain and very difficult to maintain. So yeah, to some extent, it's natural.
Right. With the exception of maybe 3% of the population
Right.
who naturally have it.
Yeah.
But if you don't have it,
So that was a kind of tyranny. This was a natural reaction to that I think was healthy in its origins. However, yes, to reject the notion of physical beauty altogether and say, yeah, you want to look like whatever you want to look like, and all of the rest of us have to say it's fine. Well, we don't actually have to say it's fine. We shouldn't be insulting people, but darn, we have a right to be honest.
I think,
This is not fine.
I think that's it. It's like the societal norms push you towards this one understood truth that everyone has to follow. Otherwise, you're going to get in trouble by the society. So then people that go far out and get rid of all of the history are like, well, I'll do whatever society says, and this is crazy and cool and weird and woo. But then there's like the actual people that see what's good in the history, see the bad in it, and it's like, no, this is what we should do now, and disregard the society norms that are actually leading everyone astray.
Yeah, there are things to learn from the past, and one of them is that how should I put this? Going back to our animal nature, really, people are going to have an idea, and it varies. It does vary culturally, certainly. Certainly, it's not an absolute, but people are going to have an idea in every culture. They're going to have an idea of physical beauty. There are some very broad similarities, but across cultures, but a lot of differences. But they're going to have an idea, and it's an offense. I will say this, and it's an offense against human nature to tell people you're not allowed to do that anymore. You're not allowed to have an ideal of physical beauty. You just have to
except everyone in whatever.
plot. Yes, we'll plot however they decide to look. And again, insults are terrible things. But I make a distinction between Thought about this once, more than once. People who look to my eyes really, really bad. I look more closely at them. I realize, if they wanted to, this is basically a good looking person.
Hmm.
Just a little bit of washing, a little bit of taking care of the hair, uh, some decent clothes. You could be a good looking person. Why are you choosing to look like this? So I'm not talking about natural.
The natural proportions of your nose.
Right, exactly. Some people are as Cena Bergerac, who in the play pulls it off beautifully. I actually don't know if the historical character that much of a knows or not, but they play pulls it off beautifully. This is who I am. That's what you have to do with what's natural for you. But uh, beyond that, you can choose to look good or not look good. Now, and here I actually dissent from some saints, although I've got some in my court as well. There's a streak of Christian spirituality that says you shouldn't consider you shouldn't worry about what you look like. I disagree because you're with other people.
And they have to look at you.
Seriously, seriously, you show up at someone's wedding looking horrible. You have insulted them, badly insulted them. If you show up at their wedding looking like a bum, uh, out of respect for other people, you should make some effort to look decent.
And does that include even sometimes climbing into a suit, which that even culturally isn't part of your background, but heck, you're attending a wedding on Long Island in New York. Just show up in a suit when in Long Island.
Out of respect for the people you are with. So that's just, I believe that's distinct from vanity.
Hmm.
And I don't think it's merely slavish either, because you're not dressing like that all the time. But if you're going to be with this group of people, you show them some respect. And if you're going to be in the general public, you show them some respect. You might have different ideas, and some people, oh, it looks good, but nonetheless, you'll try to look good. You won't obsess about it. That's unhealthy. You're not trying to attract attention, but you're trying to show you're respecting other people. It sounds funny to say they have to look at you, but it's true.
But they do.
But they do. They have to smell you too. I was talking to a cashier at a grocery store recently, really nice lady. And she made the remark, I made the remark to her. I said, you more than you deal with the whole public. And she said, oh, yeah, that's probably true. And I'll tell you this, Father, the whole public doesn't necessarily believe in bathing. That's
Great.
yeah. Yeah, so it's not just vanity, out of respect for other people. You have some cleanliness. It's also part of health as well. This very nice lady, she acquired E. coli, and she's a healthy, hygienic person, likely enough, through some of her contacts at work, the general public coming by. So, hygiene, but also respect. You have some cleanliness. You have some propriety to you. But there's one thing I agree with you completely. That's something I've totally lost. The idea that you're going to go out in public, you look decent, some propriety. One thing if you're in your house, but if you're going out into the public, you dress up just a bit.
I didn't use that. That was a cultural oversight.
A bad cultural oversight. Used to drive my grandaunt crazy, rest her soul. She was very outspoken. And she was in her 90s when I was a young priest in her 90s. I asked her once, so what do you want to do today? I was visiting home. I dropped by and I'll take you somewhere. What do you want to do today? She said, yeah, let's go to Walmart and watch the fat people. That's how she was. God bless her. Again, she was just making a point that, it's natural tendencies are one thing, And we're not in control, as you said. Naturally, there are many different body types. But not to pay any attention at all.
Right. To leave it completely unregulated.
To be completely unregulated, it is unpleasant. Bad for you, bad for your health, but I also don't think it's precisely respectful to the rest of the population who, as you said, do have to look at you.
Right. Pajama pants, and pajama pants,
Ugh.
flops, and a dirty undershirt. What are you doing out here?
What are you doing out here? You're in public. Out of respect, dress up a little, just a little. Once, once upon a time, even a working class man wouldn't. He'd venture outside the house, but he wouldn't go on a trip without a tie and a suit and a hat. So it wasn't just the upper crust. It'd be a less expensive tie and suit and hat. But where do we go from this to, even if you have money, you look like a slob?
Yeah. When did that happen? Yeah. Yeah, that's weird. I remember being in line in security.
I say this while I'm looking a bit like a slob myself at the moment.
I mean, no, you're not in line at the airport getting ready to fly on a flight wearing Cookie Monster.
No.
Wearing some pajama pants, flat brimmed hat that says F you, and a t-shirt with the two big middle fingers.
Yeah.
Heidi, who let him in? Right, you're about to get on a $230 million aircraft to fly at 500 miles an hour across the sky. You're participating in a modern day miracle.
And lots of people have to be around
And
you.
you're showing up for this modern day miracle in public in Cookie Monster slippers.
And lots of people have to be around you.
Yes.
I keep coming back to that. There's some respect that's missing.
Really be here. Well, both of your opinions on this, but I actually think that bodybuilding should be defended.
Should be what?
Defended instead of attacked.
Interesting.
So
Why defended? And I don't attack it myself
Yeah.
because I've done some of it back in the day, but why defended?
think if you look at, so the art of doing something well into excellence requires a great deal of personal effort.
It does.
And generally speaking, we admire the people that do something to that level. Like if you're playing a sport and you're at the best of your game, people love to watch it because that's a sign of human excellence. And so I think that if our body is capable of building out in a way that looks beautiful, and it requires quite a lot of dedication to do that, in a way you are being an artist.
True. Now this begs an aesthetic question, of course. And I say this as somebody did some of it back in the day. I was never really into it, but somewhat. What constitutes beautiful? Because there is a point at which some of these bodybuilders, I would not say beautiful. There are just too much muscle in strange places. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I know what you mean. I've met with people who are in this sport, and it gets to the point of inability to move in a normal way.
Yeah.
Right. People who travel with assistants because they can't reach behind their neck, or they have an assistant because they can't bend over and perform, like, can't tie their own shoelaces, things like that. But that's that I think is in my mind, that's a product of the specialization of every hobby, having gotten so far that the only way to distinguish yourself
Go further.
is to go.
Yeah.
Right? Just like, do I condemn all modern art? No.
No.
But a statue of the Virgin in pigs.
Well, that's asking for a fight.
Like that, and that is
Or a less dramatic one, where you just tape a banana to the wall.
Tape a banana to the wall.
And proclaim it art.
Right.
Or proclaim your empty spot in the middle of the floor is actually a work of art.
I will
What are we doing
say,
here?
since you mentioned bodybuilding, I will say, and I don't want to get into the debates about natural, not natural, and so forth, but there have been some who managed to be big without looking oafish. And for me, again, my generation, right? I automatically think of Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was big, like 6'2", 240 pounds, but not oafish. So I think that can be done. I think there's a reason, though, why the first and the best Tarzan was a swimmer. Not that swimming is my sport, but for just sheer athletic excellence that actually is aesthetically pleasing swimmers. So Johnny Weissmuller snatched away from swimming to be the first and the best Tarzan.
Yeah, I think I was thinking of it like as a pushback or from the stereotypical homeschooler vibe of like you shouldn't have your body be seen or acknowledged as beautiful and you shouldn't try to make it look better.
Yeah, that's a problem.
And you just everyone has to accept you as that. And it's like, well, I don't think that's true.
No.
I think like if you go for like the Greek aesthetic, like you look at some of the Greek statues, like that guy looks like he could fight a lot of people, and it looks like he could also stage on his bodybuilding podium. Like,
Yeah,
I've got
I've got an athletic history, and I like all kinds of history. Uh, and one of them has side by side pictures of statues of ancient Greek statues of athletes, and next to that, a modern swimmer or a modern wrestler in the upper weights. And the historian's point was to say the Greek artists were not fantasizing. These are actual. It takes work to get there, but these are actual human bodies, and they can be like this. And it is aesthetically pleasing, partly because they clearly can move. Um, so there's a sense of power and even grace connected with them. It's a real thing. I've got enough of the. Was I talking to today? Who did I say this to? A waitress today. I was reading a book about Rome in the Central Middle Ages. It's an interesting subject. Uh, and she made a remark about the class she was taking at a junior college and the professor's view that, if you're going to talk about Western civilization, you start with Rome. And I quoted the old line, but it's so old, it's been somewhat forgotten, so it's worth repeating it now, that Western civilization can be described as a history of three cities, the story of three, the tale of three cities, Rome, Athens, Jerusalem. And yeah, to do justice to Athens, the Greek strain, Western culture, part of that is an appreciation of the human. What's that?
Of the aesthetic.
Of the aesthetic, and even the aesthetic of the human body. There's a streak of Christianity that regards that as a vanity, inherently vain, or an ally of lust. I don't think that's necessarily true. It can be twisted that way, but I don't think it's necessarily true. So there's enough of the Hellenic in me to appreciate that. That the beauty and the unique beauty of the human body, male and female, has a place. It's worthy of some celebration. I don't mind. I don't. I'm reasonably happy with being my age. I don't mind my body being what it is now. at 60 plus. I would have minded if it was like this at 20 plus. At that stage, it's appropriate. Yeah, I think it's appropriate. Not with, not by flagrant display, still less by obsession, but at that point in life, I think it's very appropriate. It's even worse in Proverbs. So let's get Jerusalem involved. I don't remember the verse, but there's a verse in Proverbs that says a young man's glory is his strength. There's an appropriateness at that age to having a certain physical beauty. It's also very crucial for the species to keep going. Men and women do have to notice each other. And if you're overly prudish, you're not getting them. You have to get them together.
Oh, yeah. Some people think that that's a sort of distraction from the spiritual life. Noticing each other.
I've always been disturbed by spiritualities that fly in the face of the needs of human nature.
Mhm.
One of the needs of human nature is for the species to keep going. It's our animal nature. Male and female have to notice each other. You can watch birds trying to attract each other's attention. Yeah, it's part of our animal nature, which is not to be repudiated. It's part of who we are. It's not all of who we are. That's crucial. Not all of who we are. It has to be kept in its place, balanced by other things, but it's part of who we are. So I don't like a spirituality that is so sublime that it says men and women aren't supposed to notice each other. Where does that leave us? We're not all going to be monks and nuns. I don't like a spirituality that's so sublime that says, we must never engage in violence. One of my favorite stories from early U.S. history, Philadelphia on the Delaware River had established by Quakers who seriously believed we must never engage in violence. So Philadelphia had a problem. A colony of pirates established itself at the mouth of the Delaware River. And these pirates are not responding to friendly persuasion. So what does Philadelphia do? Ooh, well, they hire somebody else to take care of the pirates. This is not morally persuasive. We are too pure to sully our friendly hands with violence. We'll hire somebody else to do it. If it needs to be done, you have to be willing to do it, in principle. You might be the age, you can't be the one doing it, maybe. But nonetheless, you can't say it's other lesser beings who are going to do those necessary chores while we maintain our excellent angelic purity. There are those who are called to celibacy, obviously, and I'm a happy celibate. Most are not, and most aren't supposed to be. Because the human race in Genesis increase and multiply. The Lord Jesus teaches clearly about the value of virginity for the sake of the kingdom. St. Paul emphasizes that as well. It is a beautiful calling. I'm happy I have that calling. Sometimes I wonder if God in his mercy wanted to spare any woman the trial of being married to me. But it's a beautiful call, but most do not have that call. Similarly, there are some who are called to use their hands only for healing and nurturing. I believe that's a genuine call. I defend the right of conscientious objection
to participating in warfare.
To participating in warfare. I defend that. Some people have that call, but I do not conclude from that it's morally wrong to engage in warfare inherently. There are pirates who must be dealt with.
There are pirates.
There are
always pirates.
There are always pirates.
There always will be.
Yes, there is a necessary force in police force. The The police cannot say to the armed robber, stop, stop, stop. I urge you in the name of our common humanity and in the name of human dignity, cease and desist. No! At some point, force will be used and must be used. Hence, St. Paul famously, I think, should be famous, the prince does not bear the sword in vain. That's some Bible for you, and New Testament too. The sword. There is a necessary role of force. I won't go as far as the deliberately contrarian post-French revolutionary theorist Joseph de Maistre, who called the executioner the foundation of society. I won't go that far, but he's making a point. Society, in order to function, must have law and order. Must. And law and order cannot exist without the use of force. Disciplined force, controlled force, targeted force, force nonetheless. It's inescapable. You can't let, these scenes of teenage mobs taking over parts of American cities, not even as a political excuse, just going to be rowdy. You have to put up with that. Here, I've reached the table banging phase. You don't have to put up with that. You shouldn't put up with that. That's the point at which force is deployed. Disciplined, controlled, but force, we do not put up with that. And if you insist on doing it, you may get hurt. Because push come to shove, you won't be allowed. We will not allow you to do this. That's absolutely crucial. So I intensely dislike, vehemently dislike. How many more adverbs can I drag up? Passionately dislike.
Adamantly.
They dislike the spiritualities that are just so pure, so ethereal, that
They may prove ephemeral.
that they must prove ephemeral. They cannot exist in the real world.
I think that's very, very poignant to people's, well, I think everyone's inability to acknowledge their own capacity for evil.
Well, yeah,
So I think
it's there.
that's the thing, and it's like it's always there, and you have to ask for God's grace to confront that.
Oh, yes.
Trying to deny that it's even there makes people think they're pure and holy and all these things. It's like,
Well, and that's part of the annoyance of being earnest. Even the most thoughtless Catholic, if he goes to Mass regularly, he can't help but notice that occasionally, and I do it just about every Sunday, there are other options for the penitential rite. But most every Sunday, I insist on the Confiteor, where you say, through my fault, through my most grievous fault. Not, this is what we're up against. No, through my fault, through my most grievous fault. If you do that routinely, it has to soak in a little bit. That's the capacity for evil in you, and sometimes it's come out. It's capacity for evil in me, and sometimes it has come out. Never in grave ways. Happily, mercifully, there by the grace of God. The capacity is there. That has to be acknowledged. There are different ways of policing that. But if it escapes your own control, your own personal policing of yourself, if it escapes that, then society must have ways of policing it. Must have ways of policing it.
For the sake of the people that you may harm.
Yeah, we wouldn't use this language. It's very, the gem, to my mind, the gem of 1950s science fiction movies, which I have a weakness for. And most of them are, but some of them are good. One of them is a gem. Oh, Forbidden Planet. And oh, gee, if you're going to watch it, I suddenly realize I don't want to give away a spoiler. Oh, gee, how am I going to say this without giving the surprise twist away? There's the whole movie. Okay, I'll put it this way. What is this monster? What is this monster that I is causing these problems on this planet? What is this monster? And eventually the discovery is it's us. It's in our head. 50s heyday of Freudianism. It's the id, right? The Freudian term. A Christian might say it's original sin. But certainly it's the capacity for evil in us that has to be disciplined. And at one point, the captain, good heroic character, it's not like the villain either. The villain is a good man who went astray, still basically good, and is redeemed by the end of the movie. But the captain says, this is why we have religion. This is why we have laws. Which you could say in a 1950s movie. Before the international nervous breakdown of the 60s and 70s, from which we've never fully recovered. We still need counseling. We still need therapy. Yes, religion, friend, you police yourself, first of all. But if your policing of yourself breaks down, then there's the law, which must intervene to police society. Because to defend society, that capacity for evil is real. Look at our thoughts. I don't know about you, but I suspect you're not that different from me, in the sense that you've had disturbing thoughts sometimes. Where did this come from? Thought that just comes up and they don't play with. It's not exactly a sin because you didn't ask for it. You didn't ask to have it, but it's something worth noting. All is not well. All is not well inside me. All is not totally messed up either, but all is not well. That has to be acknowledged. Having acknowledged that, and we invoke religion especially, not just as an idea, but as we would say, as a spiritual power, a grace, to keep that under control. Keep that, yes, under control. But if that fails, then public authority must do it. People can't be allowed to get away with stuff, bad stuff. That's not an overly intellectual phrase, is it? Bad stuff. Can't be permitted. Not because the more annoying speeches in King Lear, I think. He goes on about, the speech I'm referring to, Lear goes on about the magistrate inflicting a punishment for a crime that he'd love to do himself.
Mm-hmm.
It annoys me quite a bit. It's not mere hypocrisy. The authorities do have their personal weaknesses, essentially the same personal weaknesses as the people they're punishing, yes. Nonetheless, they must punish. This crime cannot be allowed to flourish. Not because the authorities are in a different species. They have their weaknesses too, and sometimes they stumble into crime. But for the sake of the species, crime must not be allowed to flourish. It's a terrible thing to look at a place where it does flourish, it gets out of control. I think this might be happening in Haiti. Certainly it's happening in parts of Nigeria. It may be happening in parts of Mexico. Sometimes I wonder if it's happening in parts of Chicago, New Jersey. Can't let things go that far. That's a starting point. When you see a group of teenagers making a horrible mess, you don't say they're just kids. You crack down. Not in a brutal way, but they need to know.
None of this.
None of this. It's not going to be accepted. There will be punishment.
Right.
portion.
We were going to cut your hand off.
That's right. We're not going to cut hands off, but there will be punishment. Must be punishment. St. Augustine wrote about this. The early Christians didn't have to address this too much. I mentioned St. Paul, the prince does not bear the sword in vain, but the early Christians operated on the assumption that somebody else, they're a minority, somebody else is going to handle these things. Emperor becomes Christian. Yeah, we're going to have to handle these things.
Mm-hmm.
So how does a Christian handle these things? And St. Augustine reflected on this. And in so many words, his conclusion was the Christian magistrate cannot wait for complete certainty before he inflicts a punishment. He must rule. He must judge. Must judge on the basis of moral certainty, the best he can discern. But he cannot sit there and do nothing, telling himself, if I don't have complete certainty, I must not judge. No. Even with the capacity for error, he must act. Even knowing that he's fallible, nonetheless, he must act.
We'll circle that, right?
I was about to say, full circle to Iran.
Circle back. And I think I do think the point, my opinion, of course, only that, but I do think the must act point had been reached. I think in a regime that may not be fully rational, was attempting to gain access to nuclear weapons, and this has to be prevented. Even though those attempting to prevent it are themselves marked by human weakness and are fallible.
Yeah, at least it isn't our cry though to destroy our entire country.
Right.
And that's what Iran's been saying forever.
Yeah,
And burning our flag on national TV.
they've both been doing that since 1978. As people of my age will recall, people my age in particular, it's hard for us to be, if you're going to spend 48 years declaring death to America, and America decides to beat you up some, you should not be surprised. And then you wonder, uncomfortably, it's easy to say this is just rhetoric, but you wonder with this group, is it really just rhetoric? And then you see their capacity, their willingness to kill large numbers. Nobody knows how many numbers get tossed around, but who knows? Thousands, how many thousands? People we don't know, but they're willing to kill thousands of their own people to stay in power. What might they do to foreigners if they could? So yes, I think it is a case of must act, even though those taking action are far from perfect and are fallible. And the action is imperfect. It may include some mistakes.
See what the next couple of months bring.
Indeed.
Gentlemen, unfortunately, we're out of time.
Yes, we are.
Thank you so much, Padre. It's always
Glad to be here. I enjoyed it.
You're right. I sometimes think the farther ranging the conversation, the more fun it is.
We covered a good range.
We did.
Even Star Wars.
Yes, right. We went, yeah.
And it's various.
Time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
And it's a stunning moment for those of us who were children, just the right age. Oh my.
Right. Yeah.
Instantly captivated.
Yeah. Release of the imagination into parts previously unknown.
And I said, another two, that really got my attention.
Love it. Thank you, Padre.
Thank you.
Good to have
See
you.
you.